Afternoon. My name is Chris Odrosky. I am a person in long-term recovery. For me, that means I haven't had a drink or a drug since October 6th of 2008, which means I'm coming up on 12 years sober. I am currently the peer recovery coach coordinator for Oakdale Recovery Center, which is part of Hygira Health, and I've been here since March. I also run a program called Engage, which is also a peer recovery coach program, and that's a mobile program that sends peers out to hospitals all over Wayne County, and we engage with people, hence the name, and people that are there for substance use related emergencies, so overdoses, alcohol withdrawal, alcohol severe intoxication, anything really related to substance use disorder. um, because people can go out and get intoxicated and they can get in accidents, they can fall down, they can have underlying medical issues that creep up. So any number of issues can end you, and you'll end up in the hospital. And that's when Engage comes in and helps you out. So being a peer coach and an individual in recovery for as long as I have, I've picked up a few things along the way, one of which is called multiple pathways approach to recovery. And that's what I'm going to share with you today for Recovery Month. And specifically, we're going to talk about online meetings. We're going to get to that eventually due to the COVID-19 virus pandemic. Many meetings are still closed. All meetings were closed initially due to the shutdown. But now some face-to-face meetings are creeping up, but that also means that there's still a lot of Zoom meetings or other methods that they have on websites for non-face-to-face meetings. And you'll find out that there's also message boards available and old school chat rooms that we used to do. Some of us that remember early internet days of AOL chat rooms, those still exist. And those are definitely useful and can be very helpful in these during these uncertain times. And I'm sure everyone's tired of hearing that phrase, but it shouldn't just be for a pandemic. Online meetings have gotten a bad rap, I think, over the years, and only till now, when people were forced to do it, where they were really embraced. But they should be a viable option regardless of what's going on in the world. And we'll talk about the importance of that in a little bit. But first, we're going to do a quick little recap of sorts. For those of you that have or know about multiple pathways, we're going to talk specifically about mutual aid groups. These are different types of groups where the feeling is mutual. They're all there for substance-related activities and substance-related recovery. And let me get that screen up, and we will start going. So, this is based on work that I've done at other conventions and other presentations. So we are going to talk about 12-step groups, non-12-step options, learn the connection or the core components of the 12-step program, can help determine a multiple pathway approach. We will get to that one in a different presentation, probably for next week, but we are going to focus and identify and discuss the importance of online and phone options for support groups. So I always like to start off by saying or talking about the water wagon. Many people are familiar with people falling off the wagon, whether it's for drugs and alcohol or food or whatever. People use it for the kind of trivial things, and someone will say, hey, I thought you quit that. It's like, yeah, I fell off the wagon. Well, there actually was a water wagon. I did a little research on this a few years ago, and it dates back to the early 1900s. And for the most part, this has been consistent. The language today is consistent. If you're on the wagon, you're in recovery, or you're not using or trying to remain abstinent from drugs or alcohol. If you fall off the wagon, you're actively using. So what I ask at the beginning of all my presentations, and what I ask of you, the audience, regardless you're in recovery, or if a loved one is in recovery, or if you work in the field, what happens when somebody continues to go off and on and off and on, and they keep falling off the wagon? Well, a lot of times we look at them and we say, well, you're just not driving the wagon correctly, or you need to like hold on to the wagon tighter. I say at some point, we have to look at the wagon. We have to look at the wheels of the wagon. We have to look at the trail. We have to ask the manufacturer what's going on with this wagon. How come people keep falling off? The wagon is an example of a recovery plan. And if we keep giving the same recovery plan to the same individual and they can't manage to remain abstinent, we can't keep wagging our finger at that individual. We have to look at the recovery plan and start tweaking it. So with that, take a brief look at this. These are styles, approaches, philosophies of recovery. Abstinent-based, 12-step. We're going to talk about that. Faith-based, spiritual, clinical, institutions. Not really going to get into too much of that for this presentation. Harm reduction model for under the non-traditional or modern recovery options. Harm reduction, medication assisted. Those two are pretty controversial in nature. Also, we could spend time on that on a different presentation. Of course, we're going to talk about non-12-step options. We're going to talk about secular, non-religious, which would secular meaning non-religious or based on scientific studies, peer-assisted recovery, and holistic methods. So getting into these mutual aid groups or self-help groups or support groups, whatever you want to call them, the most traditional one, of course, is Alcoholics Anonymous. It's kind of the trunk or the roots of the recovery tree. It's established in the 1930s. It is the most prevalent mutual aid group around. It is spiritually based, which means it doesn't have to be based on any particular religion. There are religious people that are in Alcoholics Anonymous. The founders had a religious base, but they do stick to the spiritual base in order to help make it more appealing to other people who might have conflicting religious beliefs or no religious beliefs at all. So you may have heard someone say, I'm not a religious person, I'm a spiritual person. That's taken directly from the language that they learned in 12-step meetings. Their primary focus is alcohol in AA meetings. However, I've seen from my own personal experience and from what I'm hearing in the community is it's changing in various communities. So more people are welcomed and encouraged to talk about, let's say, their drug use in an AA meeting. There also, some groups are more open to talk about your mental health diagnosis or other topics that are causing you to struggle with abstinence. Granted, there's some old timers out there that might tell you to stay focused on alcohol. We don't talk about anything else, but those are old timers. That's what they do. So getting over to the other side, the Narcotics Anonymous was established in the 1950s. They did have a membership spike in the 1970s and 80s, also spiritually based. They follow the same religious, spiritual discussions taken right out of the AA meetings, and their literature specifically does not distinguish between drugs and alcohol. It specifically says alcohol is a drug. So that's pretty common for people that just drink. They might not even do drugs. They prefer NA meetings. The formats are a little different. The face-to-face formats are different, but not so much where, well, it makes a big difference to some people, but for most people, I'd say there's no big difference between the two formats of these meetings. Other 12-step groups. There are groups for atheist and agnostic, also known as free thinkers. There's a separate group that is not based on, it's based on the teachings of Christ. It's also based on the 12 steps, but it is a separate group. It is not Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. It's their own separate group. They have their own separate website, their own separate main office, their own separate conferences. Everything is separate. And like I said, they They take 8 principles of the teachings of Christ and they infuse them into the pre-existing 12 steps. They have an all-encompassing kind of model as well, as opposed to the other 12-step family. They have separate, mostly separate groups for other activities that can cause people trouble. So there's an Overeaters Anonymous, there's a Narcotics Anonymous, there's a Tobacco Anonymous, there's a Cocaine Anonymous, there's an anonymous group for pretty much anything you can think of. Groups like Celebrate Recovery cast a wider net, and there's other groups that we'll talk about that do that as well. So if you're struggling with more than one thing and you may not feel comfortable sharing that in an AA meeting or an NA meeting, you're very welcome to share those things at Celebrate Recovery. And I'm not saying people are going to shut you down at these other meetings or AA meetings as well. I'm saying in general, this is what they practice and this is what they promote. Another group that's based on Native American, focusing on tribal traditions and their own coined phrase. They created this phrase called wellbriety, or a word rather, wellbriety, which is a combination of wellness and sobriety. This group is called White Bison. And you can go to their website as well. You can do a Google search and look up White Bison. And you can find out where their meetings are. Usually you have to be connected to a tribe to find their meetings, but not necessarily. And they have a strong online presence as well. You can find dual diagnosis and co-occurring focused AA meetings. Not that many of them, but they are out there. When I worked in Washtenaw County, there were at least one out there that I knew of. I'm not sure if it's still available or not, but you can look those up specifically in a Google search. There's many other 12-step groups, anonymous groups for gambling, sex addiction, overeating, mental illness, and more. This brings me to Smart Recovery, self-management and recovery training. That's an acronym. They have a lot of acronyms. They love acronyms over at Smart. It is non-12 step. It is secular. It is based on science and reason. It encourages crosstalk, which is just a difference in format and setup. They have group facilitators that are officially trained through their website. They have slow but steady growth over the last 25 years. There are face-to-face meetings and several Zoom meetings. You can go to their website as well, which will be listed later in this presentation. I like Smart Recovery. I'm a Smart Recovery facilitator. I was planning on starting my own face-to-face meeting actually in Westland at one of the Higera offices, which I still plan on doing someday. But the COVID-19 pandemic kind of changed everything. So that was put on hiatus. But there's still a lot of options available. Smart Recovery was one of the groups that I was talking about earlier, where if you go to smartrecovery.org, you can get a schedule for their online meetings, which happen at a specific time on a specific day. And they also have the chat rooms that I mentioned earlier. And you can also do a message board as well. So you got 3 different online options. Plus, they have printer-friendly PDFs that you can use. You can order all your books from there as well. And because I think literature is becoming way more important to people now that they're, especially during the lockdown, and they're home a lot more. They don't maybe have as much contact with the outside world, but they easily order something through the mail, and they can get workbooks through Smart and order books for AA. They can get all the different resources that they need just by simply going to their website and making a few clicks. Other secular groups include LifeRing, peer-to-peer based, focusing on self-direction and personal empowerment. Women for Sobriety. SOS, which is, I don't really think you can find any more of those meetings. They were kind of absorbed by Smart. Rational Recovery, which is originally part of Smart Recovery, kind of a spin-off. They have a website and a book. Refuge Recovery and Recovery Dharma. I like to talk about these separately because yes, they are non-12 step, but they're not exactly secular. in nature. They do have a spiritual component to them, but it's focused primarily on meditation. And although it's a Buddhist pathway to recovery, you do not have to be Buddhist to go. This was based on other people who happen to be Buddhist, and they share their story and they share their methods of meditation. And they turned it, just like AA got started, they turned it into some literature, they turned it into some face-to-face meetings, and now both groups have done very well for themselves and are growing in popularity. It is non-12 step, but they practice 4 noble truths in the Eightfold Path. They focus various types of meditation and how to practice them in your everyday life. They provide guided meditation, which I think is very important to point out, because whenever I bring up meditation to a client or a friend or a family member of those who are suffering, they kind of cringe. Like, meditation, not really my thing. And that's okay, because most people are like that. Guided meditation, excuse me, is just what it sounds like. Somebody's in the room. It's one person that is designated at every meeting to help guide everyone through the meditation. They help you get you started. They help make sure that you're in a comfy position, that your eyes are closed if you're comfortable with doing that, and they start to provide you guidance on what to focus on and how to focus on your breathing. And like everyone else, myself included, when my mind starts to wander and I start thinking about, I don't know, the grocery list or all the things that need to get fixed on my car or whatever, this person will chime in every few minutes and remind me to stay focused and to come back to center. And I think that's great. If I just tried to meditate on my own with no help, obviously my mind's going to wander and I might not be able to remind myself to stay centered. So I find that these meetings are very helpful, whether they're online, face-to-face, or other. You can also find several meditations, guided or otherwise, on YouTube. It's open to anyone, not exclusive to those who practice Buddhism. And like I said, a lot of these groups are I call them all-encompassing, or they cast a wide net. I think Refuge and especially Recovery Dharma, they cast the widest net, I think. I've met people at these meetings that suffer from anxiety, depression, sex addiction, porn addiction, along with those who are codependent and just need, a group of people to talk to, and of course people who suffer from alcohol and drug addiction. And it's a great way to meet new people and hear new perspectives, and also maybe work on your anxiety. If you're someone who is an alcoholic and has depression, you're going to hear a lot of different perspectives from a lot of different types of people. There's friends and family groups for our loved ones, and we have Families Against Narcotics, Smart Recovery, Friends and Family. They have their own workbook and some online meetings and a face-to-face meeting that might come back soon. With your traditional groups, Al-Anon and Nar-Anon, recovery community organizations, social media support groups. And here we'll get to the online portion. Okay, a lot of people are Zooming. Zoom has become very popular. And this is the update to this presentation that I've been doing for a while. It's best to go directly to the main website and follow current recommendations. And it's great to continue to go to these websites and find out which meetings are open face-to-face and which meetings are still available through online, whether it be Zoom or other methods. So right there is your list: AA.org, NA.org, SmartRecovery.org, LifeRing, CelebrateRecovery.com, and both of the Buddhist recovery groups are there. Plus that other those bullet points off to the side are more specific. Always check and make sure that the meeting is still going on before you plan it ahead. I would just plan ahead. It's good. Never hurts to do that. And another component is phone meetings. Phoning it in. Same thing as I said before. Go to these main websites and check out the groups below and ask for telephone directories. You can also call main offices. There's usually an AA library or NA main office in Wayne County that is still taking phone calls and giving out up-to-date information. And like I said earlier, let's get back to me in space here. Hi, I just wanted to drive home this point of the importance of online meetings and phone meetings. We need to make sure that these resources are still available to the public after the pandemic, after we kind of go back to normal, whatever that means. I've been talking about online meetings for years, and I usually get a very not supportive response to my online meetings or my phone-in meetings ideas, because who wants to go do that? Well, there's a lot of people that want to do that, whether there's a pandemic or not going on. Some people have legit anxieties and they don't feel comfortable being around large groups of people. They don't feel comfortable leaving their home. So these options will and should be available ongoing, even after this pandemic is over. So I just want to make sure that that is understood. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of Recovery Month. Again, my name is Chris Odrosky, and I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I hope you guys have a nice day.